see you. Let's get everybody. All right. Good morning. When I started as United States Attorney earlier this year, I received a unanimous message, urgent message from our community and from law enforcement that this office needed to take on a leadership role to address the dramatic rise in violent crime in Minnesota. On May 3rd, I announced that we together would make violent crime our top priority. Part of that has included a commitment to our community to be consistent in our actions and transparent with what we are doing and what we are seeing on the streets of our cities. This morning, I will discuss some of the dozens of cases that we have brought against high-risk, violent offenders in the past few days and weeks, and recent special law enforcement operations to make our cities safer. But first, I want to explain what our Violent Crime Initiative has revealed about the nature of the violence that we are facing. I want the people of Minnesota to know what we know about the violence afflicting our state. The violent crime statistics are alarming. Shootings, carjackings, and gang activity are at or near all-time highs. Chief Huffman will summarize some of those numbers as they relate to Minneapolis. But the numbers are only part of the story. Minnesotans need to know the rest. What law enforcement is encountering on the streets of Minneapolis, St. Paul, and other cities today is far more disturbing than even the alarming numbers show. By their actions, their weapons, and their words, violent offenders are displaying an absolute disdain for the law and a disregard for human life. As a result, the nature of the violence on our streets has changed. It is far more dangerous. As we have learned from violent offenders themselves, the disdain many offenders are showing grows out of a belief that they simply will not be held accountable for their actions. Because of this belief, criminals have upped the ante, engaging in ever more violent behavior that threatens our safety in more dangerous ways. So this is what we have seen over the past few months of our Violent Crime Initiative. Larger numbers of violent offenders are employing far more militaristic and deadly weapons. Chief among these are Glock 19s equipped with auto-sears or switches that turn these handguns into fully automatic machine guns. These machine guns are having a devastating and destructive effect in our communities. At our May 3rd announcement, we played a video showing the ferocity of a Glock 19 operating as a machine gun. Now, through our investigations, we have seen firsthand how they are being employed on the streets of our cities. And we are bringing tough federal charges against criminals who possess these dangerous machine guns. Simply possessing a machine gun is a federal crime that brings serious federal penalties. In many of our cases, we are also seeing offenders ratchet up the violence by using devices and accessories such as body armor, laser scopes, and extended magazines that can turn ordinary disputes into deadly encounters at a moment's notice. What used to be knives are now guns. What used to be guns are now machine guns. And what used to be bullet wounds are now deadly sprays of machine gun fire. This is what we're hearing from hospitals and emergency medical personnel. In addition, we have seen a dramatic increase in drug-related violence. As a result, we have included the DEA and Homeland Security and their task forces as part of our violent crime initiative. These agencies are focusing heavily on the sale of fentanyl, a deadly drug that is highly profitable. Many fentanyl dealers arm themselves with machine guns and militaristic gear to protect their deadly trade. Yesterday, in addition to the enforcement actions in the Twin Cities that I'll talk about in a moment, DEA agents and local officers arrested violent drug dealers in Rochester. We have brought federal charges against 10 of these drug dealers who were protecting their organization with high-powered firearms. I am pleased that the DEA and Homeland Security are working with us to address the violence that fentanyl and other illegal drugs bring to our communities. Together, our federal, state, and local partners have focused our resources on charging the most violent offenders in our communities and taking them off the streets. This week, 2 national ATF Special Response, or SRT teams, traveled to Minnesota to conduct joint law enforcement operations alongside other federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. These SRT teams are elite tactical groups that travel to high crime areas to arrest significant violent offenders, like those we are targeting in our communities here. Yesterday, these teams arrested high-risk violent offenders in Minneapolis and St. Paul, who now face serious federal charges. My partners with the ATF will share additional information about yesterday's arrests and the operation in a moment. And I want to pause and say that while we are fortunate that 2 of these elite teams traveled to our community to help us arrest high-level targets, it is sad news that we in Minnesota need them in the first place, but we do. Yesterday's operation is just the latest example of our violent crime initiative in action. Throughout the summer, local, state, and federal enforcement officers from the ATF, FBI, Homeland Security, BCA, DEA, the marshals, the sheriff's offices, and their violent offender task forces, and local police, such as the MPD and the St. Paul Police, have focused their resources to change this wave of violence and bring the most dangerous offenders to justice. We have charged literally dozens with violent carjacking, armed robbery, illegal firearm use, and gang-related crimes. Over the past couple of weeks alone, we have charged over 35 high-risk violent offenders, all of whom will remain in custody pending trial and who face serious federal sentences if convicted. These include, for example, a serial offender arrested by an FBI SWAT team for multiple armed robberies against immigrant-owned grocery stores. On May 3rd, I pledged that all of my criminal prosecutors would be handling violent crime cases, including myself, and we are. This significant increase in the number of investigations and prosecutions requires an all-hands-on-deck approach, and I am proud of the work that the prosecutors in this office have done in just these few months. We have responded to the needs of our community and will continue to do so every day. For those displaying a disdain for the rule of law and public safety, these charges should be a wake-up call. The mistaken belief that few consequences will flow from your actions has been proven false multiple times over. In this regard, I will highlight just a few of the recent cases that exemplify both this new level of violence and what we are doing about it. First, the case of Derek Scott. Derek Scott has 8 prior felony convictions, including multiple convictions for domestic violence. When agents arrested him recently, he was in possession of deadly fentanyl pills that he was selling and a machine gun to protect his trade. This is bad enough. But here is what shows the attitude on the street that we are seeing in our investigations. When Mr. Scott was brought into federal custody, he told the officers that he would have no trouble doing a short amount of prison time and that he would get back on the street, get more machine guns when he's released. Even as he was being processed by officers, he was scoffing at the rule of law. He then proclaimed, "I will still be the king." But Scott's bravado was badly misplaced. Possessing a machine gun in furtherance of the sale of fentanyl carries with it a mandatory 30-year federal prison sentence. If convicted, Scott will not terrorize the streets of Minneapolis for decades. Given the disdain that we are confronting, we need the word to get out. Anyone considering selling fentanyl and using a machine gun needs to understand that fentanyl and a machine gun can equal 30 years in prison. Another example is the carjacking investigation led by the FBI and Minneapolis police involving a violent ring that targeted Uber and Lyft drivers. And I cannot say enough about the hard work of the FBI agents and analysts and the Minneapolis Police Department on these investigations. I have worked personally with them. They work around the clock, 7 days a week, to bring people to justice on behalf of the victims. As outlined in the superseding indictment, 4 defendants, who have all now been arrested, charged, and detained, targeted and terrorized ride-share drivers by luring them to specific locations under the guise of picking up or dropping off passengers. When the drivers would arrive, the defendants assaulted, pistol whipped, and threatened to kill the victims. These defendants, as charged, perpetrated multiple violent acts against their many victims, and one is charged with assaulting a federal law enforcement official during an attempted arrest. These carjackings were not one-offs or random opportunities for joyriding. They were organized, calculated, violent crimes. The defendants turned carjacking into a business. They stole victims' vehicles, stole their wallets, and forced the victims to give them passwords so they could transfer money from the victims' phone app accounts. I've had the opportunity to speak with most of the carjacking victims in this case, many of whom are recent immigrants who just wanted to earn a living and support their families. Everyone I spoke with shared the similar harrowing story, and some have not been able to return as rideshare drivers because of the stress and the trauma of what they went through. Simple folks who just wanted to earn a living to support their families. Finally, I want to highlight the type of violent offender that we have all placed at the top of our priority list. Shooters who repeatedly harm and sometimes kill their victims with their unrepentant violent behavior. Just one example is the case of Saladin Salim. Salim has a long history of violent crimes. After serving 15 years in federal prison for a prior weapons offense, Salim recently returned to Minneapolis, where he quickly obtained guns and went on a shooting spree. Salim shot 7 people over just a few days and killed one of them. As his victims went to the hospital day after day, he obtained more weapons and shot more people. We have charged Salim with serious federal weapons offenses that should ensure that he is never in a position to kill anyone on the streets of Minneapolis again. These cases and many more are playing out every day in our cities. We are working hard to turn this around. One way to do this is to speak and act clearly and concisely. Anyone involved in gang activity, the sale of fentanyl, possession of a machine gun, or shootings on the streets of our cities will face serious federal charges. Your mistaken belief that there will be no consequences for your actions will only get you a significant federal prison sentence with no parole. I've said this directly to gang members and to defendants who have come in to cooperate with us, and they have implored us to say it publicly, to reach others, to turn them around, and that's what we were doing. I will now turn this over to Assistant Special Agent in charge of the ATF, Jeff Reed, and then come back later for some questions. Jeff.
Good morning. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Luger. ATF is grateful for your leadership. My name is Jeffrey Reed, Jeffrey-R-E-E-D. I am the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the St. Paul Field Division. Yesterday, I was the incident commander for an arrest operation where we utilized the ATF Special Response Team and a DEA Special Response Team. In addition to those special teams, other arrest teams were formed from the collaboration of local, state, federal law enforcement. Those teams were from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office Violent Offender Task Force, the Minneapolis Police Department's Gun Investigative Unit, the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department, the St. Paul Police Department, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, DEA, FBI, Homeland Security Investigations, the United States Marshal Service, our ATF agents, and of course the United States Attorney's Office. For this federal level operation, we focused on several affiliated, very violent street gangs within the Minneapolis metropolitan area. Individuals in these gangs are connected to numerous armed criminal acts to include homicides, firearms trafficking, drug dealing, and other conspiratory crimes that have affected the peace of our communities. A number of individuals on our list met the threshold to utilize ATF and DEA special response teams. Based on the risk factors and their criminal histories and the potential for violence, more often than not, our local teams will safely effect the arrest. However, there are times when calling in these special response teams is necessary. Special response teams are elite tactical groups that rapidly respond to high-risk law enforcement operations. Their work includes search and arrest warrants, high-risk criminal investigations, undercover operations, surveillance operations, and protective service operations. They often serve in various roles such as team leaders, tactical operators, forward observers, crisis negotiators, medics, and canine handlers. Our reasoning for calling the SRTs were precautionary based on the risk factors to ensure these arrests could be conducted in the safest manner possible. Thankfully, we were able to safely take 5 high-risk individuals into custody yesterday. Those 5 are included in a total of 16 federal arrests in this recent investigative operation. In addition to the 5 arrests yesterday, in total for this investigative operation, we recovered 29 firearms and 3 auto sears associated with these suspects. When U.S. Attorney Luger announced his office's violent crime initiative early this year, ATF was ready. Over the past couple of years, we've seen the concerning increase in violent gun crime. During that time, ATF has been deliberate in its efforts to strengthen relationships with our local law enforcement partners so that we can help build cases that meet the federal guidelines for prosecution. To aid in that end, ATF brought in additional agents and intelligence research specialists from other field divisions to increase our capacity this summer. Right now, the top priority on every law enforcement officer's mind is reducing the violent gun crime that is affecting the Twin Cities. Crime knows no borders, which is why the interagency partnership is absolutely crucial. I am proud to say that the team standing here and the many more with whom we serve in making strides in the fight against violent gun crime, despite the hurdles we face. Yesterday's operation is not the end. Not the end of ATF's efforts to address the violent gun crime in the Twin Cities, and not the end of our long road toward justice for the victims who have suffered the result of the spike of this criminal senselessness. Let this single effort be a message to caution to those who would choose to settle their differences with firearms. We will not relent in our pursuit. We will not allow the continued use of gun violence to intimidate and paralyze our society. It will not be tolerated. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Kraus, Assistant Special Agent in Charge with the Minneapolis Federal Bureau of Investigation. Mr. Luger, I'd like to thank you for your leadership. And my esteemed colleagues, I'd like to thank them for their support, collaboration, and the efforts that have been put into this violent crime initiative. In today's world, the threats we face are too broad, too dangerous, and too all-encompassing to tackle them alone. On behalf of the FBI, I would like to thank the communities we serve and those who have remained steadfast in supporting law enforcement and all the work that we do together to reduce violent crime. The United States Attorney's Office Violent Crime Initiative reflects a team approach. The FBI remains committed to collaborating with our state and local partners to investigate and reduce violent crimes. The FBI continues to leverage our Violent Crimes Task Force and our Safe Streets Task Force to address violence and gang activity. The FBI is assisting our partner agencies by sharing resources, manpower, and utilizing cutting-edge technical and analytical support to identify the most violent and most dangerous criminal organizations and offenders in our communities. Armed robberies, Hobbs Act violations, and armed carjackings remain a top priority for the FBI. A recent case involving armed robbery highlights that work, as Mr. Luger initially highlighted. On Monday, August 8th, Nicholas Dancy was arrested on a federal arrest warrant for multiple robberies of groceries located in St. Paul. According to court documents, between May 27th and June 5th, 2022, Dancy robbed 3 grocery stores along University Avenue. During the robberies, Dancy used a firearm to threaten the employees and demand cash. Dancy is also convicted as a felon and is prohibited under federal law from possessing firearms or ammunition at any time. He is charged with 3 counts of Hobbs Act robbery, 1 count of brandishing a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence, and 1 count of possessing a firearm as a felon. Armed carjackings also continue to impact our communities. As Mr. Luger mentioned about the Uber, Lyft, and Saffold case, as well as the dozens of arrests that have been done associated with that, the efforts continue that we will make arrests and try to stem the tide of carjackings. The FBI continues to collaborate with our partners as part of this work to develop criminal investigations and disrupt and dismantle criminal activity, the hierarchy, and the broader group to try to have a stronger influence on the long-term impact on crime. While every agency here today has a different role and responsibility, fighting violent crime is a responsibility that we all share. The FBI and our law enforcement partners will continue to focus our enforcement resources on identifying, investigating, and prosecuting the most significant drivers of gun violence, carjackings, and other violent crimes. Although we have made significant progress against violent crime, there is still more work to be done. Those of us in law enforcement cannot rest and will not rest while any Minnesotan lives in fear in their own homes or their own neighborhoods. The FBI's goal on violent crime remains the same: addressing criminal violence and delivering justice to those who commit these senseless crimes. We remain committed to our ongoing collaboration with our law enforcement partners and the communities we serve. To those who commit these senseless acts and have not been arrested, we will find you and we will hold you accountable. We owe that to our communities. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Good morning. My name is Justin King. I'm the Special Agent Charged with the Drug Enforcement Administration, Omaha Division. I want to thank you for having me here today. The role of the DEA is to investigate and dismantle the most dangerous drug trafficking organizations who are pushing deadly drugs into communities such as Minneapolis and St. Paul. Violence, fear, and intimidation are key parts of the drug trade in the United States and abroad. In DEA, we see drug-related violence in communities, no matter if they're rural, suburban, or urban. Every day we see this. Today, with our state, local, federal, tribal partners, DEA is working to push back against drug threats and violent crimes that are plaguing our communities. The drug-related crisis facing our nation today is unlike anything we have ever seen. We face unprecedented overdose crisis, claiming more than 107,000 lives in 2021. This equates to 298 people, our family members, friends, and loved ones who die each and every day. The DEA is seizing record amounts of fentanyl and methamphetamine, 2 drugs that are flooding the United States in new forms, including deadly fake pills. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It's 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. Just 2 milligrams of fentanyl, enough to fit on the tip of a pencil, is considered a potentially lethal dose. And our lab testing at DEA has revealed that 4 out of every 10 fake pills with fentanyl contain a potentially lethal dose. And our investigators are seizing thousands of pills across the state of Minnesota. Violence often associated with drug-related activity is also rising sharply, as we know, and that is not just here but nationwide. In 2021, the DEA and its law enforcement partners seized more than 8,700 firearms connected to investigations of drug trafficking organizations. We know that the vast majority of identified criminal drug networks are engaged in gun violence, and many identified criminal drug networks sell fentanyl or methamphetamine. Almost all of the identified criminal drug networks that sell these deadly synthetic drugs, fentanyl or methamphetamine, are also engaged in violent gun crimes. We know from our data that there is an overlap, a direct correlation or connection between overdose hotspots and areas where drug crime is high. This means our targeted violence reduction efforts must target overdose deaths. This morning, the DEA stands proudly with its partners in highlighting the accomplishment of these important efforts, and we hold those responsible for crime and illicit drug trafficking in our communities who are accountable. Yesterday's events should send a clear message to those who wish to traffic in dangerous drugs and perpetuate violent crimes in our Minnesota communities that we will not stand the harm and chaos that you have created. Together, law enforcement will work to reduce these and eliminate these offenders. Thank you for having me. I will be followed by United States Marshal Eddie Frizzell.
Good morning. Eddie Frizzell, F-R-I-Z-E-L-L, United States Marshal, District of Minnesota. This is an outstanding example of the collaboration along with the U.S. Attorney's Office, my esteemed colleagues in their agencies, in our fight against crime. The United States Marshal Service is contributing to this effort by carrying out our primary mission: fugitive apprehension and the protection of our judicial system. It is our common goal to ensure that those that would commit crimes against the communities in which we serve will not escape justice. As we speak, our fugitive hunters, whose primary mission of fugitive apprehension, are engaged in sending very clear message that you're hearing from each and every one of our partners up here today. You can run, but you cannot hide. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you again for taking the time to listen through these long remarks that we are. But part of the purpose of this is really to demonstrate the efforts and the continued commitment of all of us. With the significant surge in violent crime that we've experienced and that we've seen, that was not news to anybody standing up here today. Everybody up here has been continuing to discuss and collaborate and discuss strategies and how to address this surge in violent crime since earlier this year. We want to thank U.S. Attorney Luger for stepping up. One of the first conversations we had with him is how he could provide a leadership role between him and his office to assist everybody that we see standing here today, and he's done that. And he's highlighted that through the work that he and his office are doing day in, day out. And it's a testament to the commitment that everybody behind me here today has to addressing violent crime in our communities. At the BCA, we continue to provide assistance in this effort with diverting agents and analysts and scientists from their day-to-day casework to provide additional assistance to violent crime that's plaguing our communities. This past week, Minneapolis and BCA and Hennepin County Sheriff's Office and all the federal partners that have already talked here today worked on focused enforcement details that we're doing on a regular basis, resulting in another 24 arrests and 12 firearms seized during that effort. Those efforts are ongoing, and we will continue to do that, identifying those who wish to cause harm in our communities. The BCA and all of our partners that we've talked about and will continue to discuss today, so far in these efforts, since we've been committed to the dozen-plus agents that we have working with the city of Minneapolis and surrounding communities, have recovered over 174 guns, opened 115 criminal investigations, 269 arrests. There's also thousands of fentanyl pills have been recovered, even though that's not the focus of these efforts, but it illustrates again what's already been said here today, that the correlation between fentanyl and firearms trafficking and what it does to our communities. Our laboratory sees this day in, day out. Just this morning I was told that last year our laboratory used to identify 100 cases a month that identified drugs with fentanyl in it. This year we're trending at 120 cases a month identifying fentanyl coming through our laboratory. Our forensic science laboratory has logged over 800 hours of overtime, specifically focused on violent crime, and we've reduced the backlog of violent crime cases in our laboratory by over 1,200 cases. We continue to rely upon, and we've highlighted this for you before, that the ATF has stepped up and brought forward a NIBIN van to enter cartridge casings and identify cases and correlate and connect them together so that we can more quickly identify those that are committing this harm, prepare cases for the United States Attorney and the county attorneys processing these cases. We rely heavily upon that, and it's been a great resource to our state. With that, there is some positive hope, and I'm going to turn it over next to Chief Huffman. There has been a decrease in the violent crime we've been experiencing this year, but it's not enough, and these efforts must continue. Identifying this today is an illustration of what will continue to happen if people wish to traffic firearms in our communities, if they wish to traffic narcotics in our communities, and they wish to commit gun violence in our communities day in, day out. This team remains committed to focusing on those individuals who wish to cause harm in Minneapolis and our surrounding communities across Minnesota, as we won't tolerate it. The last thing I would say is we're talking very specifically about law enforcement today, but we need the partnership in our communities across Minnesota. We need to work closely with our community partners and groups to continue to work for ways to reduce violence outside of the law enforcement efforts that we're outlining and illustrating today. And with that, I will turn it over to Chief Huffman from the Minneapolis Police Department.
Good morning. Amelia Huffman, Huffman, currently the Interim Chief for the Minneapolis Police Department. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm humbled to be standing here as part of this group of public safety partners, all laser focused on collaborating to effectively reduce violent crime in the Twin Cities. We achieve better results for our communities when we share information, resources, leverage our unique assets, and coordinate our efforts. And I thank you all for your partnership. In the short time since Mr. Luger has returned to his role as the U.S. Attorney for the state of Minnesota, he's made it clear that he is a pragmatic, dedicated partner in the work to make our neighborhoods safer and more peaceful. As you've just heard, he and his team are delivering on the commitment that he made on May 3rd to bring an all-hands-on-deck response to addressing gun violence and carjacking crimes that are causing so much harm in our community. It's not news to anyone listening today that the statistics about violent crime in Minnesota are sobering. And in Minneapolis, these trends are truly writ large. Carjacking, a crime that we did not track as its own category prior to 2020, continues to increase, with 343 cases reported this year, compared to 277 at the same time last year. In 2021, over 600 people were shot in the city of Minneapolis, and this year more than 350 people have been added to that list. Shootings in 2022 have increased 101% over the number at this time in 2019, 101%. That increase represents 178 men, women, and children who were struck by bullets in Minneapolis. Of our 58 homicide cases being investigated in Minneapolis this year, 81% are shooting deaths. Members of our community have called 911 to report shootings and shots fired more than 5,800 times this year. Over 1,000 calls to report a person with a gun. In Minneapolis, we're fortunate to have ShotSpotter technology to help our officers respond to a location where gunshots have been fired more quickly and more accurately. This technology covers a little more than 7% of the city's geography, neighborhoods historically impacted by gun violence. And in those 7% of the city neighborhoods, we've recorded nearly 4,000 activations for shots fired just this year. In those incidents, more than 13,000 rounds have been fired, nearly 2,000 in bursts of fully automatic gunfire in the densely populated streets of Minneapolis. The real-world impact of these numbers is staggering. Behind the statistics are people, our friends and neighbors, our colleagues, our family members, whose lives have been impacted, forever changed by violent crime. Eruptions of gunfire send bullets through our streets and parks, into cars, homes, and businesses, injuring, killing, and robbing our residents and visitors, our business owners and employees of their sense of security. In Minneapolis, we're rightfully proud of our beautiful, accessible park system, advertising that 6 blocks is the longest distance that anyone has to walk to get to one of our 180 parks. Too often now I hear from families who are too fearful to use those beautiful parks, to walk or ride their bikes to the park or simply play outside because they've seen the impact of shots fired in their neighborhoods. Gun violence prevents people from thriving in our city, and the neighborhoods disproportionately impacted are our most diverse. 60% of gun violence is concentrated in neighborhoods in just 2 of our 5 police precincts, and 83% of those who have been shot this year are Black. It's unacceptable, and we must not become complacent or habituated to this level of violent crime as a new normal. It's not enough to simply say those words. We are called to step up and act, and all of us must play a role in preventing, deterring, interrupting, and responding to violent crime. The agencies represented here today are stepping up in the Greater Minneapolis Violent Crimes Initiative to use coordinated investigations, focused enforcement, and both state and federal prosecution of violent offenders to stop violent behavior. In addition to the arrests and charges being brought, focused enforcement details this summer have yielded about 120 Minneapolis guns and over 4,000 deadly fentanyl pills taken off the streets. I'm so grateful to Mr. Luger for his leadership and his deep compassion for victims of violent crime. And I want to reiterate my thanks to the men and women from all the agencies represented here today who are working alongside my MPD officers. These law enforcement professionals are providing the skills, expertise, and plain old-fashioned hard work to take guns out of the hands of those who would commit harm, to solve cases, hold offenders accountable in the criminal justice system, and reduce violence. The officers and investigators with the Minneapolis Police Department are pleased to be working alongside our partners. And finally, I'm proud of the courage, selfless service, and compassion displayed by the Minneapolis police officers working throughout our city. The tenacious investigative work described here today and represented in the dozens of charges being brought is vital to provide a pathway into the criminal justice system for those who have been harmed. The recovery of 673 guns in Minneapolis this year is due to dedicated police work. Police work being done in very challenging circumstances by men and women who step up day and night, shift after shift, to protect and care for members of this community. I thank them for their steadfast commitment to honorable service. Their work truly does make a difference. And in collaboration with our partners here, our community members, and our community-based organizations, we will not stop. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office.
Hi everyone, my name is Chief Deputy Tracey Martin with Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. Just a few brief things. On behalf of our agency, I just want to thank, like Chief Huffman said, thank the men and women of our agency who are out there every day doing this important and very dangerous work. Second, everybody here, I'm so grateful for the amazing partnerships. These strong collaborations are, it's, you know, what we're going to utilize in the future. It's the tool that is going to truly impact violent crime. And finally, obviously, I want to thank U.S. Attorney Andrew Luger and his team. His message of, you know, they're going to be tough on criminals, and not only his message, but his actions are really going to make a difference in our community. So thank you.
So, a couple more thoughts before we take questions. Thank you, everybody, for your remarks. Thank you for your patience. We'll be finishing up soon. In addition to prosecuting violent offenders, we have also been engaging with the community and listening to the voices of victims. None of the crimes that we prosecute are victimless, and it's quite opposite. The victims' lives, their family members, their sense of safety, and their communities are forever changed. We are also supporting efforts designed to intervene with individuals involved in gang activity. As part of the Minneapolis Group Violence Initiative intervention strategy, I meet with gang members who are deciding whether to reject a life of violence. I sit across the table from them and deliver the same clear message of deterrence that I'm delivering today, that they may face long federal prison sentence terms of 10, 15, or even 30 years without parole. I tell them that our point is not simply to lock up a lot of offenders. Our goal, our joint goal, is to reduce violence dramatically by changing minds and behavior, and that I hope they choose an alternative path. And as I tell them, the choice is theirs. This violence, by the way, is not just being felt in the Twin Cities, but throughout the state. I recently visited with law enforcement in Duluth, where they too are seeing a spike in violent shootings and drug dealing. And we have pledged to help there as well, and anywhere in Minnesota where federal charges will assist in reducing violence. And I cannot say enough about how the U.S. Attorney's Office, the prosecutors in this office, have risen to the challenge. When I announced that everyone would handle a gun case, everyone said yes, and everyone is handling at least one gun or carjacking case. Every part of our community has a role to play in the work that we are talking about. I have met with, and my office continues to support, organizations and leaders working on the streets with young people to curb the violence. Street outreach, interrupters, people who show youth an alternative path, case managers, and school officials are all doing tremendous work, and we support them all. They are making a difference one day at a time. But no one should be mistaken about our resolve. The current wave of violence and disdain for the rule of law is being met with swift, strategic enforcement, such as the enforcement actions we have taken up in recent days and weeks. Our shared priority is to break this violent crime trend by changing the narrative on the streets and restoring peace to our cities. It is simple. If you violate federal law, you will face swift and significant penalties. We think the word is getting out. We have heard from defendants, cooperators, and from people who work on the streets that our message is beginning to be heard, but we have a long way to go. Before we take a few questions, we're going to play a YouTube video that we made with the help of people from the Department of Justice. I'll preface this by saying, in meeting with cooperators and defendants who are arrested and want to talk to us, I always ask the same question: what will it take to get the word out? One recent person said to me, go on TV and tell them, and people will listen. So here we are, and we've created a public service announcement that we hope you will play and put on your websites to help us spread our message. Tasha. switches on our streets. These illegal devices turn a semi-automatic firearm into a fully automatic machine gun that will shoot a continuous spray of bullets with a single pull of the trigger. Under federal law, this device is considered a machine gun, and simply possessing one can carry harsh penalties, up to 10 years in federal prison. If you have a gun with a switch, we will charge you with federal crimes. To our community members, we need your help to take our neighborhoods back. If you have information about switches or other crimes, please call the tip lines on the screen. I pledge to work with you to make our neighborhoods safer. Thank you for your help. So I'll now take a few questions, and if they're for law enforcement, I'll direct them to the appropriate agency. Yeah.
Can you talk about your efforts to cut down on our fine straw buyers?
Sure. There's a recent law that was passed that makes it a specific crime to engage in straw purchases, which means that if you're not prohibited from buying a gun and you go to a gun store or elsewhere and buy guns for people who are prohibited, you are what's called a straw purchaser. The law was passed and is now in effect. We have a number of investigations to crack down on straw purchasing. They take time, but we'll have more to say about that in the future. Yes. Okay, and if you could just tell me who you are and where you're from, that's all.
Yeah, Joey Peters with the Sahan Journal.
Sure.
In regards to the carjacking, what is the bar of barometer that will turn that from a local offense into a federal offense?
Sure.
Also, how did the FBI get involved?
Sure. Good questions, Joey. First of all, there's a federal carjacking statute that's quite simple. It basically says if you use violence to intimidate or harm someone in the part of carjacking, it's a federal crime. So what I pledged to do in May of this year when we started this initiative is to take all violent carjacking cases involving some people 18 or older, which is our cutoff, and we are doing that. There are some that will go to the county. We talk to our county attorneys and our local law enforcement all the time about the appropriate venue. But right now, if you're 18 or older and you're engaged in a violent carjacking, you're going to be prosecuted here. That's number one. Number two is the FBI. FBI handles a lot of these cases. ATF does, others do as well. But they work primarily with the local police in St. Paul, Minneapolis, and elsewhere on those investigations. They're joint investigations. They require a lot of work and they take a lot of time, but we are handling more and more of those. Thanks, Joey. Stephen.
Stephen Montemayor, Star Tribune. I'm curious when you mentioned this belief that there's not going to be consequences for actions. Is it your assessment or even first or second hand that there's a belief that not enough is being done at the state level, council, prosecuting or judiciary?
Yeah, we're hearing it directly from defendants and cooperators, but also from people who work on the streets and advise us on how they're trying to interrupt and stop violence. So before we announced this initiative in May, we met with community leaders, with families of victims, but also with defendants and said, what's it going to take? And what we're hearing, and it's unanimous, is that there is this belief on the streets that there will not be serious and swift consequences and that they can get away with what they are doing. And so we are trying to get the word out that that is simply not the case. Paul?
Yeah, Andy, thanks. Paul Bloom, Fox 9. It was actually a question for Special Agent Reed.
Good.
That still relates to the SRT teams that arrived. Sure. Had you built up an investigation to the point where, okay, now we have to close the deal and go get these guys, which is why they were called in this week? And then for Andy, a follow-up is, have those guys been charged? Will we see the indictments
Yes.
in the near term?
The answer to your second question, Paul, is yes.
The answer to your first question, yes, absolutely correct. We had been in an investigation phase concerning those individuals, and from what we had learned from them, from their prior history, which I alluded to, or the indications of violence that they were prone to, that is why we did employ the SRT teams.
And how big are they?
That's a,
Tactical?
yeah, it's a tactical issue. I will
They
not
come
discuss.
in, they're here for a day or two, you make their...
Whatever amount of time that happens for them to do their business that they do.
And that's just not something our local law enforcement is capable of doing?
I'm not saying that, but our SRT teams, due to our special and our ancillary duties for the Department of Justice, are specialized in extremely violent armed individuals throughout the nation. And they actually do their responsibilities daily, fly around the nation doing that. So they're very attuned to these specific type offenders and their prone nature to violence.
Yeah, and I just want to follow up on that. We are very fortunate in Minnesota to have talented, hardworking law enforcement agents and officers, and it's sort of an incredible statement about the level of violence that we asked for and received SRT teams to come here to assist. But I've met with all of the ATF, DEA, and other agents and FBI agents working on these cases, and they are the best of the best. Yes? Yeah.
This is actually for Superintendent Evans. The last meeting we had back in May, there was some discussion that state resources may not be able to continue in the fall. Is that still the plan, or is that changed?
Yeah, so it's an excellent question, and we continue to assess that daily, the same way all of our partners do when it comes to assessing what we're looking at. One of the things, and I think Chief Huffman, alluded to this, that the violence remains high, and so the BCA works across the entire state of Minnesota, focusing on all types of different crimes, but violent crime is certainly one of those areas we assist, and we'll continue to have close conversations with Chief Huffman and the entire team as to what it is. So we haven't made a final decision on that yet, but we're continuing to assess where the assistance is needed.
Hi, Nina Moody with NPR News. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the idea that offenders are giving feedback that they feel like they're not going to be serving serious time. Can you talk a little bit about the reasons that they feel that way? Is it staffing levels? Is it decisions by judges?
I think it's a narrative that, Nina, has grown over time. Obviously, courts were shut down to a great extent for a period of time due to the pandemic. Nobody's fault, just a reality, as well as staffing shortages throughout law enforcement. But I can't tell you what every single member of the gang-related community is thinking. It is a narrative, it is consistent, and we're hearing it repeatedly. And so again, when I sit with a cooperator or someone who we've charged who is willing to talk to us, and I ask the question, what's it going to take to turn this around? They tell me to let people know of the serious federal sentences that will be falling on them if they continue to engage in this behavior. And they also say, you've got to do it. You can't just say it. You've got to bring these charges. So imagine gang members telling law enforcement to bring charges in order to turn it around. But that's where we are. One more? Yeah, I'm sorry.
John Lordson from WCCO. Actually, for Interim Chief Huffman, the feedback you're getting as part of this initiative in your community, what have you heard from people? Have they noticed a difference in this? What can you say as far as that?
Thank you. That's a great question. We have been hearing from folks in the community that they would like to see even more focused enforcement details, particularly in those neighborhoods I mentioned before that are really so impacted by violent crime on a regular basis. Those folks want peace in their streets. They want to sleep through the night without the sound of gunfire. They don't want to have to encourage their children to go to safe rooms in the house or to drop down to the floor when gunshots are fired in their neighborhood. They want to be able to use their parks. They want their kids to be able to play outside in their yards. And for that, they're asking us to bring more resources, including all the resources that you see here today.
Thank you all for coming. I just want to emphasize before we break that what you see up here doesn't happen in every state and in every community. The level of cooperation between local, state, and federal law enforcement is increasingly appreciated and welcomed. And as someone who's been a prosecutor elsewhere, I can tell you this is unusual, and we're thankful for it. So I thank all my partners. Thank you for coming.